Well, thanks for joining us. We have about, I don't know how many people here, 15 to 20. This is the Louisville Laravel Meetup, or Denver Laravel Meetup. Really, I think it's the only Laravel Meetup in Colorado, so we're happy to be here.
Nice.
Here we are. And we're excited to have you. I emailed you a few questions. We brainstormed a few more just a few minutes before. And again, thanks for joining us. And I'm Steven. I'm the organizer, and Troy back there is the co-organizer.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can't see. Yeah, you can't see us. That's okay. All right. How do you think we should open this off? Do you want to?
Yeah, we can go through some of the questions you had if you want to.
Yeah, let's start off with a few of the questions. Let's start off with a little background. So how did you gain traction with Laravel to the point that it became widely popular?
I think a lot of Laravel's popularity is due to being in kind of the right place at the right time in PHP. Laravel came out in 2011, and CodeIgniter was kind of, I wouldn't say it wasn't dead, but people were sort of getting antsy or like apprehensive that it wasn't being updated very quickly. It wasn't really super like up to date in terms of the features that PHP had available. Like I think PHP 5.3 had recently come out at the time, and it wasn't really using any of those features because their minimum PHP version was pretty low. And I think people were kind of ready for something else that was kind of a spiritual successor to CodeIgniter, I guess, in the sense that it was easy to use and was accessible and approachable and stuff, because some of the other frameworks at the time didn't really feel that way. Either their features were complicated, or they just didn't have the documentation really in place for them to be accessible. And I think Laravel was just in the right place at the right time where it came out at that time. And I worked really hard to get documentation from the beginning, because I felt like that was really CodeIgniter's strongest selling point, really, was that they had probably some of the best documentation for any PHP framework that was available at the time, really. And it was just sort of concise, and you could learn CodeIgniter in really just an afternoon or a day, learn the basic features you needed in order to get started. So I think when Laravel came out, it was just sort of a natural, a lot of the people that were using CodeIgniter started using Laravel. And it also just became sort of a natural first framework choice for a lot of people, I think, because it had the documentation and was sort of accessible like CodeIgniter, and was all the syntax is sort of easy to remember in a way. So I think being approachable and accessible are sort of the two main things that helped it really gain a lot of traction. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then especially once Laracast came out, and it has just such an extensive video library, it's sort of hard to compete against that kind of thing. Like once it's all established like that, to start from the ground up with a framework and try to gain that level of traction, I think Laracast really helped out Laravel a lot, and kind of took it to the next level where people could get started with it really easily.
That's awesome. Who here has used CodeIgniter? And how many people here was Laravel their first PHP? Okay. Kind of a split. And how many people have watched anything on Laracast? Okay. Yeah. Everybody. Every person in this room. Oh, okay. Yeah, everyone here. So, yeah, I think that is a big contributing factor. So a question that we had, I think that fits right with this one, is how are you preparing Laravel for longevity and for the community to contribute and carry it on, beyond yourself? Or do you feel like it's native, or kind of what happens there?
I feel in a way like every project of this size is going to have some main person behind it to sort of steer it. It's hard for me to really picture projects that are successful like that don't have sort of one or a few people sort of driving it. So I'm not sure we'll ever be like totally decentralized in a way. But big thing the community does is as time has gone on, their pull requests that we get have sort of gotten better and better. And now some really cool features actually come in through the community. So like in 5.6, there's some cool new cron features to where you can have scheduled tasks run only on one server. That was a community contribution. A lot of the validator, if you've ever like validated an array input, all of that was basically a community contribution by Mohammed, who now is Laravel's only employee now. So, I think just as the community digs into the framework over the years, more and more people kind of look at the source of it and jump in. The pull requests get better and better, and a lot of people help out with the documentation. But my role, of course, I still write quite a bit of features myself, and have been kind of putting out packages like Spark and Horizon and stuff like that. A lot of times I kind of serve as half author, half curator in a way to where I sort of have to curate, a lot of pull requests because we get quite a few every day, say 10 or 15 a day come in, and sort of have to curate, what makes sense for the framework and what doesn't. And a lot of the ones that don't get merged aren't really bad features or bad ideas. It's just, trying to curate it down to where the framework feels really cohesive and polished, and it doesn't feel like just a grab bag of random things that a lot of people thought were useful, that thousands of people all kind of threw in there. So I kind of serve as sort of a filter and a curator to make it feel sort of tight and that it all kind of makes sense as a one cohesive product.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important to have that filter. Otherwise, you end up with a framework that has too many features.
Yeah, and I think a lot of projects can struggle with that because saying no is probably one of the hardest things to do in open source. To be able to turn down a pull request is pretty hard actually at first, and it's still hard. Even I guess it's been 6 years or almost 7 years now since Laravel started, but even now it's hard, because someone put in their time to work on this feature that they think is pretty helpful, and it might be pretty helpful, really. And to kind of shoot that down is hard. And I don't really have a great way to solve that problem. We've experimented with stuff in the past where like you had to submit a sort of a proposal for your feature, and that had to be approved or denied. But even that is a little tricky because a lot of times you'll see a feature proposal and you're like, that sounds great, but it kind of depends on what the code looks like. If it's 30 new files and a bunch of changes to existing files, and we're going to be a lot more apprehensive about merging it than if it's a 7-line addition, to some existing file. So it's tough, to strike a balance. And the proposal system isn't really perfect because a lot of times we have to see it to know, if it's something that I really want. So I don't know. I don't have a good solution there, but anyway, I feel like I got off on a tangent there for a second. But
it's a challenge that we as developers and users of the framework don't really think about, or at least I don't think about when I'm using it. But if you hadn't, it wouldn't have been so user-friendly for me in the first place. Here's another interesting question. Do you find it hard to write simple, clean code, or does that come naturally to you?
No, it's still fairly challenging. Like what I've been doing recently is a lot of times I'll spike out a feature, or not really a feature. I'll spike out like a function or maybe a class, real nasty and pretty gnarly, and then just work it down until it's like 6 or 7 lines of code. And sort of that involves usually like just method extraction, conditional extraction, maybe extracting like an entire class, and just sort of keep massaging it until it sort of feels good. And a lot of times even that, it feels sort of arbitrary. Like I just kind of me looking at it and being like, oh, okay, this looks fine, I guess. But usually when I start out, I'll just write it out real hacky and just try to get like a test to pass, or try to just get it working, in the browser or whatever, and then go from there. But it's not usually something that just comes out perfect on the first try. It's usually something that takes several revisions, to sort of get right, and sometimes even have to scrap something entirely and just kind of rethink it. But no, to answer the question, it's not something that's supernatural unless it was just just like a really simple feature that was super easy to implement. Anything that's, somewhat difficult is not going to come out clean the first time.
All right. So you have to work at it too. That's good.
Yeah, well, I think Eloquent's been rewritten probably 4 times from the ground up. It's okay. It's pretty good now, I guess. I mean, I feel pretty good about it now, but it's been an ongoing thing over the years.
Wow. Another question that the group submitted. It says you get a lot of flack for Laravel's design decisions as compared to other frameworks. How do you handle this criticism without becoming jaded against the community?
It's really easy to not become jaded against the Laravel community because most of the people that criticize Laravel are not Laravel users, really, or a lot of times have not even used Laravel for anything. So I'm not really have any issue getting jaded with sort of the Laravel group. I think a lot of people, it's just like, I just think there's a lot of kind of psychological dynamics at play in terms of the frameworks people use, the tools they choose, stuff like that. It's not really as objective as people would think developers would be. And when you have a lot of your career invested in a tool, like say like Symfony or Zend or Cake or whatever, you're just sort of naturally apprehensive about, another framework being like a better tool, or at least just like an alternative tool that's basically viable. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's just sort of like, sort of like that gambler's mentality where you put so much into something that it's hard to pull out, really. So I don't know what drives a lot of that. I mean, some of it's just genuine. They don't like the, they either don't like global functions or some of the service location type stuff. But I don't know. For me, it's always been a balance of, let's just look at real code. And if it's testable and clean, then what are we fighting about? And if it's not, then, I want to fix it. A lot of arguments sort of get lost in this sort of ethereal make-believe land of hypothetical code. And I think if you can bring 2 people to an actual editor and look at real code, that a lot of times you can find common ground faster that way, or at least demonstrate, hey, this isn't, unmaintainable garbage. It's actually testable and maintainable. But I think it's hard to do that if you're just on like a social media platform like Twitter or Reddit, because you're not sitting down at an editor. You're just sort of talking about made up code. So I always just try to ground it in the concrete. If you're in that situation, like look at real code.
Interesting. We have a few more questions about the actual framework. And one of them was, would you be interested in utilizing RFCs for framework changes, or what's your opinion on that?
It's sort of like the proposal situation where, like, I'm trying to think of a good example, like from the past, where, well, like this recent scheduler example would be a good example, where the new feature in 5.6 is like when you define a scheduled task in your console kernel, you say like schedule command and whatever your artisan command is, and then you can chain on it's like on one server or only on one server. I can't remember the exact method, but you chain that on. And that was the proposal. So there actually was sort of a proposal for this feature beforehand from the developer. And at the time, it was kind of like, yeah, that sounds really cool, but we just sort of have to see like what that looks like implementation wise. And like I said, like a lot of times, if I just have sort of an RFC or a like a GitHub issue proposal, it's, even if the idea sounds real good, the hard part there is just like how intensive are the changes going to be? Because a lot of times once the feature's merged, now it's sort of like on me to maintain. And if there's a bug, a lot of times the person that contributed that code doesn't pop back up, and say, oh, I see there's a bug with my code, let me fix all that for you. A lot of times it's something that me and Mohammed have to sort of patch up really fast and get out the door. So it's sort of like, am I going to be willing to take on sort of the mental overhead of maintaining this new feature that I didn't write, which makes it harder to begin with because I didn't write it. So I'm not super familiar with how it works a lot of times. So yeah, that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of similar to RFCs and the proposals. It's better than nothing. I mean, like, there's no hurt in making a proposal or an RFC, I guess. Even if you get an "it depends" answer, or maybe we can just give a no right off the bat, which saves everyone's time a little bit. So there may be some benefit there.
Okay. Cool. Well, another question. Remind me what FIG stands for? Framework and how does or how doesn't Laravel work with FIG?
I used to be a member of FIG, and I think some of the early FIG proposals were actually pretty, obviously really useful because they're basically de facto things that everyone uses now, which wasn't the case at the time. Like when Laravel first came out, a lot of the method names and stuff were in snake case because that was how CodeIgniter was, and it was sort of following a CodeIgniter's footsteps. But now, of course, PSR 1 and 2, gosh, I've lost track of which ones are even which. I think it was PSR 1 and 2, or the code formatting guidelines sort of dictated that, you know, method names are camel case, and various other rules that can just sort of be automatically applied. And of course, the auto loading standard on PSR 0 and PSR 4 are huge in PHP, mainly because of Composer. So I think FIG was really good a few years ago. I'm not like super excited about the recent stuff FIG has done because I sort of agree with, and I think Fabian from Symfony shares like the same opinion, where I sort of agree that the FIG served its purpose, and it's like it could be disbanded now, really, because what needed to happen happened, I feel like, already in the past, and now it's just sort of making things just to make them and just sort of just justify its own existence a little bit, I think, at this point. Like you know, even the middleware and container interop stuff feels a little bit like that, but we'll see. I mean, I could, you know, maybe some more super useful stuff will come out of that. I think the container thing probably has the most potential out of the recent FIG stuff, more so than some of the other guidelines they put out recently. But I'm not a member of it anymore, actually, mainly because not really for any dramatic reason other than I just didn't have time to even really participate like in all the Google group threads and like reviewing the standards. And I feel like if I wasn't really going to participate, then, you know, why be a member if I'm not really contributing very much? So I just kind of backed out of it.
Any follow-up questions on FIG?
Do you think that'll hurt Laravel by not looking like a team player? Other frameworks.
You hear that, Taylor? So the question is,
I heard
the framework by not participating, I suppose, or looking like a team player? Or
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that the FIG is super well known outside of people that sort of follow PHP fairly closely, but I don't know. The FIG moves super slowly, so any harm that would come to Laravel would be something that came on very slowly. And I could always, one thing I've considered is I can always appoint a representative for Laravel into the FIG, so that I don't really do it myself, but that someone that's really interested in that, they really like, you know, refining standards or like, you know, digging into that kind of thing. That's someone that we could actually appoint someone to do. And I've talked to the FIG about that when I left, that was always an option to sort of appoint a representative. And so that's something that could happen in the future. I mean, especially like if there was a standard proposal that came out that I was really interested in, and I felt like I really wanted to have a say in how it was built, because I wanted to use it in Laravel or for whatever other reason, then I think I would try to join back in, or at least put a representative in place to sort of make our voice heard a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, the FIG moves kind of slow because it's not a huge group and everyone has full-time jobs and it's pretty busy. So it's not something that's, you know, moving very fast anyway.
awesome. You mean not everybody wants to sit around and work on standards all day? Okay. Now let's change the direction here a little bit and talk about JavaScript just for a little bit. So with all the JavaScript framework options, what gravitated you to Vue.js as opposed to the others? How has that turned out?
I think honestly, it was just that I was a bad JavaScript developer and like I needed something so simple because the only thing I had ever done before that, I had been I guess I'll have to back up a little bit. I had been at Userscape after I wrote Laravel. About 6 months after I wrote Laravel, I got hired by Ian Lansman at Userscape, which makes help desk software, to help rewrite some of their softwares in PHP and to help rewrite stuff onto Laravel because it was written years ago. I mean, before there were any PHP frameworks. And so I was always on the back end for 3 or 4 years, really, and never wrote any front end code at all. And so when I came into, being in a position where I need to write front end code, I needed something pretty easy because all I'd ever done in the past was, jQuery or whatever. And a lot of the other options were just pretty intimidating. And the cool thing about Vue was I could just drop it, in a single HTML file and start playing with it and sort of get some immediate feedback. And so to me, that felt a lot like Laravel, where I can just start hacking in a routes file and sort of get some immediate feedback about how things are working. And I was able to read through the documentation, in basically a day. This was back, I don't even know if Vue 1 was out at the time. So there were less features even than there are now. So it was pretty minimal. And read through it all and just all kind of clicked and made sense. And I think it was easy to pick up. So I just kind of stuck with it. I can appreciate React because I think it's also actually somewhat simple in a way, other than the compilation step, I guess, for beginners. But, I just kind of like the hand holding that Vue had. And I feel like the philosophy between Vue and Laravel is really similar in the way that Evan approaches Vue. He spends a lot of time on sort of documentation and user friendliness and being approachable and making it all feel really nice and clean. So to me, it just resonated, as something that felt like really fit sort of Laravel's style. But it was never really my intention to make it any official tie-in with Laravel. And even now that the tie-in is there, but it's not so strong that just run a artisan command and blow everything out of the way. But I don't know, I still really liked it, and I really like the other stuff they put out around it, like Vue Router and I guess mainly Vue Router. Used to be Vue Resource, but that isn't around anymore.
Well, I don't think I would have tried Vue.js if it hadn't shipped with the Laravel framework, and I did find it pretty easy personally to start playing around. You guys?
Yeah, I think it helped a lot when Evan was at Laravel starting 2015, was it?
2015.
It was the first year he was there.
Yeah, sounds about right. 2015 or 16.
Yeah, that was really great.
Yeah, I'm excited he's coming back this year. I barely got him back this year because he's leaving for China like one day later, basically, after Laracon Chicago this year.
Cool. Any other front-end questions, JavaScript questions from the group? I guess I'm just curious, do you see a bright future for Lumen? Because there's a lot of front-end is becoming more complicated, and the whole app, you've got a front-end app and you've got your iPhone app, and the back end could just be the API. Did you see a bright future for Lumen in terms of development and adding features, or even just, I don't know, maintaining or promoting it?
Especially after Symphony announced they cut the Solix. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think the hard part with Lumen, or the thing that's always tough about any kind of micro framework, is if you're not sort of adding features a lot, it feels dead. And if you add features a lot, people feel like it's bloated. So you're kind of always stuck between this rock and a hard place, I feel like, with micro frameworks. I don't really, I can't say I really have any huge plans for Lumen. And I think that if anything, my direction would be more to, first, I agree that, a lot of people are just consuming an API from the back end now. That's basically all I do now. And I think that any future direction would probably be to make Laravel itself more friendly towards that, which we kind of try to do with 5.5's API resources. And, I'm sure there will be further improvements in that whole area. I doubt I'll really, focus on Lumen over Laravel though, in the sense of, adding a lot of stuff to that. I think it will stay pretty minimal and really simple and light, because I find a lot of times if I ever try to start something on Lumen, that I always just end up wanting full Laravel at the end of the day anyway. So
I'll go back and get a project and be like, oh, project. Should do that.
Oh, yeah. We have several Lumen installs running various clients. That works great.
mhm. Yeah, I run Lumen myself in production, and will continue to do so, really. But I feel like it's just kind of like, it's sort of like Slim. Like I doubt Slim's getting any huge new features this year. Like it's just kind of the nature of the product that it's always going to be pretty much the same and stay pretty small. So most of the new stuff's usually going to come to Laravel, and if it's API related stuff, usually I try to make it work in Lumen, obviously, because Lumen is kind of geared for APIs. But I just don't have any plans to really add a ton to it.
Okay, great. Let's talk about some of the services that you've created. For example, Forge and Envoyer. Here's a question. It says, you've made configuring servers and continuous deployments really easy and enjoyable. Do you have any ideas in the works for more developer services like these?
Right now, I'm not working on anything in that particular area. I am working on a big project that I'm working to get ready for to debut at Laracon, but it's not really in that scene. I kind of feel like I don't want to take on another product in that market right now, because those kind of products are hard to support, because people have all kinds of various server issues. Some are, some may be Forge's fault, but a lot of them are not. And I don't really want to take on the customer support burden, of another server related product. So I'm working on something a little different right now that I still think is really cool, even though it's not in that area. So I've been hacking on it for a couple months already, and of course have about 6 more months to go until Laracon. So hopefully that'll be all polished up and ready. But after that, we'll see. We are making improvements to Forge mainly. I would say mainly just focusing on improving Forge, improving Envoyer, because we have a whole list of features we want to add to that. We being me and Mohammed, because Mohammed really leads up a lot of the development on Forge and Envoyer now. But we have a list of improvements to make to that, but nothing new really coming.
Okay, great. Well, a follow-up question was, what kinds of personal projects or side projects do you typically work on? Doesn't sound like you may have a lot of spare time right now, but
No.
Okay.
Any side project I work on is really a Laravel project. I don't really work on anything that's not going to be released in the Laravel world. But to me, like a lot of the projects, the project I'm working on now, it feels like a personal project, even though it's not. Like at some point, like, Laravel started as a personal product or a personal project. So the line between work and personal project is still fairly blurry, I would say. Because a lot of times when I'm working on Laravel, the difference seems minimal between just a side project that I've been working on for 7 years, or is it work yet? So to me, it still feels like I'm working on side projects. They just happen to be official Laravel projects that will eventually be released.
Well, that's good if it feels like a side project. But it's
Yeah.
I wish all my side projects were.
Yeah.
Well, you did make the wiki font change to the UI, to the Laravel website, right?
Was that today?
Yeah, today or yesterday. I saw that.
Yeah, the font updated today. It's the same font that's used on the Forge dashboard. We just used it on the Laravel website as well.
Cool. That got me to go directly to the Laravel site after see the new font.
Somewhat related question is, when was the last time you took a vacation?
Just a few weeks ago, actually, we went to Dallas, Texas, to go to Six Flags and this ice skating place and ice sculpture thing, sort of like a little Christmas vacation. Even when I go on vacation, it's a lot easier now with Mohammed, especially now because Mohammed helps do customer support. We sort of tackle that together. It used to be that on vacation, every morning I would have 20 or 25 customer support emails to answer, but now it's not nearly so bad. So usually when I go on vacation, I of course take my laptop, and I'll usually spend 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night just knocking out customer support emails. That's really all I have to do. Sometimes I'll try to tackle a few GitHub things, but usually I'm not spending more than an hour a day, so it doesn't feel too bad. This year we're planning to go to Hawaii, so that'll be a pretty big vacation this summer. Be the longest trip we've taken with the kids so far, so should be pretty good times.
You deserve it. Because the follow-up question was, what do you do that helps you disconnect from work? And I think you just answered it. You have an employee.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, I was talking to Jeffrey Way about this a little bit just the other week, and of course, I think he tweeted today actually that he's looking for someone kind of real part-time. I think it was like 10 hours a week or something. But I told him I should have hired earlier. Like, it's probably one of the better things I did. But I think when you build your own sort of baby ecosystem, it's hard to sort of let other people, get in there and sort of help you cook and stuff. So I put it off too long, but it has been just like crazy valuable because, the Forge API was built by Mohammed. All the Forge UI stuff was built by Mohammed and David Hemphill. Spark 6.0 was basically entirely upgraded by Mohammed, because that's allowed me to really pour into, like the new project I'm working on, to pour into more, to pour into Laravel itself, the framework more. Because I not only have Mohammed, but I have a part-time designer, Steve Shoger as well, that's with me every third week. So he does a lot of UI stuff, and he sort of helped me refine the typography on the Laravel website. And he does, all the design for, he refreshed the Spark design for 6.0. So hiring people has been really key, I feel like. But in terms of other stuff, disconnecting, I'm really just hanging out, at the house. I go work out and play basketball quite a bit just to sort of get out of the house and move, because working from home, I feel like, I'm not sure working from home is like super healthy in general, even though it has a lot of benefits, of just like, it's super convenient, obviously. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We were just noting that about half of us work from home.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I feel like it's easy to get just sort of like cloistered in a little work from home shell. So I try to get out of the house a little bit. Unfortunately, Arkansas, I don't know if it's like this around there, is not really like, there's not a ton of cool co-working spaces or like, hip places to hang out and work on tech stuff. So that's a little unfortunate, but
Hey Taylor, are you still in like the Bryant area?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's like a 10 times fold because I used to live in Arkansas actually. Once there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't remember?
What's that?
Actually, now I'm genuinely curious. That's because I want to see if you remember how bad it was.
So what was the question about Bryant?
Because I used to live in Arkansas, and we were wondering if you remembered me, and I was hoping no. Do you remember the Arkansas hackathon?
The Arkansas what?
The Arkansas first hackathon. It was that one, like, I guess they tried to make it almost a co-working space startup accelerator.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I do remember that, I think.
Yeah, I gave the talk for that.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think I was. I don't know if I was there or not.
You were. I got to meet you. I asked you why I should use Laravel. I asked you why I should use Laravel instead of Cake PHP. Actually, it was super fun.
Was it? Where was it? Was it at Axiom or?
It was downtown Little Rock. I want to say.
Like at the Venture Center downtown. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. They moved. Anyway, we're like in our own little personal conversation here. they moved to an even cooler space actually recently, but it's just like a 30-minute drive downtown. I don't know. So I just kind of don't. I rarely go down there, but they're actually in an even better co-working space. So it's usually pretty empty and 30 minutes away. So I can either go sit by myself there or sit by myself here.
That's compelling. Yeah, anything else? I think you've touched on this, but one of the questions was, have you ever felt burnout or burnt out on the Laravel project, and how do you deal with that?
I can't say I felt totally burned out, but after Laracon EU this past one, I did take like basically 2 months of just kind of like maintaining. I didn't really do anything new. I didn't code any new features. I just like maintained GitHub, answered customer support, and just sort of chilled a little bit. And that was mainly just to avoid feeling burned out, because I usually, if I don't really try to push myself, if I'm just feeling like I really just don't want to work on any Laravel stuff right now, like I don't try to push it too hard. And it's always sort of a fine balance to me of like, I think it's important to be able to work through things, even if you don't have just like, even if you aren't bursting with motivation, right? So that's one problem some people have, where if they're not just like bursting at the seams motivated, they can't do anything. But at the same time, I don't really like to just push through if I'm just not feeling it, because I feel like that's also sort of a recipe for just sort of bad vibes and burning out on stuff. So I don't know what the perfect answer is there. I did take sort of like a 2 months. If you look, I was just actually looking at this recently. If you look at my GitHub like user activity, after August and September, our slow Arkansas internet will load. After September, you can see there's sort of like a lull from September through basically December, where I didn't really do. I maintained stuff, but I didn't just go crazy, committing on GitHub and stuff. So that was sort of avoid feeling burned out. But I think in a lot of ways, Laravel still feels like such just a side project, personal project that just happens to be somewhat popular, has kept me, interested, and I still love working on it, love building new things on it. And honestly, having a lot of just as much fun as I've ever had really building out, the new package I'm working on now. So, I'm still really loving it, and hopefully other people, keep loving it too, and they can keep going for years to come.
That's awesome, and it's good to hear that you know how to take care of yourself. Because the last thing the Laravel community needs is Taylor Otwell to be like, oh well, I guess I'm gonna do Ruby now.
Yeah, and it sounds funny, but I mean it happens. It really does. Like, I mean, see projects all the time, and just sort of like the maintainer has disappeared. And it's a cool project, but you look at like the GitHub activity chart, like there's been nothing since like 2016 or whatever. And I don't know, it really happens, but yeah.
So like Laracon obviously is a huge event. I assume that's probably your biggest event all year. How do you deal in preparing for that? How do you deal with the stress of, I've got a package and it's, I hope it's done. I gotta have it done. Like, how does that all play out? How do you manage it?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, because there is no guarantee it will work out or be finished, and so that's sort of like the adrenaline rush of it all, I guess. And if it's not finished, then screw it, I guess. Like, I'll have to, I'll just show Laravel 5.7 features and come up with something cool there. But I don't know. It's just always worked out, and like, there's always I try to start early, to give enough time, because if the project fails now, there's still 6 months till Laracon. We'll have cool stuff in between now and then, if I'm just sitting here thinking about it all day. So I think it will work out. One actual real tool I use to do that is do all the hardest stuff first. So like on this new package, the features that I thought were most challenging, I just did those first, the most like intimidating, hard features, because that's sort of like a litmus test. If I got through those, like probably I'm going to get through the rest of the whole package. But if I fail there, like at least I'm failing early, you know, so I'm not like putting off all the hard stuff until a month before Laracon, and I've knocked out, you know, 90% of the easy stuff, but this last 10% kills like the whole project. And now you're really messed up because you're like 2 weeks from Laracon, and you know hundreds of people are going to be there and you have nothing to say. So yeah, that's a real tool I use a lot, honestly. It's just trying to tackle the hardest stuff first, and I think it's just sort of like a good thing to get into, because it really saves you time at the end of the day, because if you fail fast and fail early, and you can move on instead of wasting a lot of time.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. Any other questions about burnout, work schedule, and you deal like, how do you balance with, you know, having a family, kids, wife, you know, lots of Laravel? Are you working like 8 hours a week?
Well,
3 hours
yeah, I work just 8 to 5, like a normal schedule. But I mean, mainly because I work on Laravel full time, because of, you know, Forge and Envoyer and Spark and all that supporting me. So if I didn't, it wouldn't be possible really to maintain Laravel like at this level if you weren't working on it full time. There's just no way you could stay on top of it and like be in a healthy place really. So, but working on it full time is actually plenty of time. I mean, 40 hours a week to work on Laravel you can get a lot done really. And, you know, that's way more than most people have for their open source projects. So it's a big advantage Laravel has. I mean, not many open source projects, very few really have, you know, someone just thinking about how can we improve this open source project 40 hours a week, basically. And now with Mohammed, basically 80 hours a week, because we have 2 of us. So it's, you know, there's not really any balance problem, because I just work 8 to 5 and then I'm done. But before I worked full time on it, I would stay up until, you know, midnight or 1 a.m. quite a bit, because I didn't want to sort of be working like late. So I would get off at 5, hang out with my family until people went to bed at like 9:30 or 10, and then work from like 10 to 1 a.m. And I did that a lot, like especially when I worked at Userscape and was building Forge, because all the Forge was built at night. Because I was working at Userscape during the day, so all the Forge was built between, you know, like 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. basically over the course of 6 or 7 months. So late hours, I guess, but I don't do that anymore, and I don't even like, I just physically can't do that kind of thing anymore. Like I've noticed that like I'm in bed by like 9:30 or 10 every night now, and I used to just crush like to like 2 a.m. up at 7 a.m. like feel fine. Like just doesn't work that way anymore though for me. I guess I was in my early 20s. I mean, when I launched Laravel, I was like 24 or whatever, and now I'm 32. So I don't know. Something's happened between then and now. Like it's just not the same.
That's understandable. Here's a broader big picture. You know, what does success look like to you in 2018?
You know, I mean, there's a lot of different levels, I think. Like there's personal goals I want to achieve, you know, like, you know, just you know, striking a healthy view of like, gosh, I'm trying to think how to word it, but like I want Laravel to be as popular as it can be, and just, you know, making the best product I can, putting the best effort in I can, and just sort of really putting, like, it sounds cheesy, but just sort of like that sort of craftsman artisan style approach to what I'm writing. I want to put every amount of care I can into it and just make the best possible thing. And if I do that, then, you know, that's fine. And hopefully it will launch and be successful. But at the end of the day, like, I try not to get too wrapped up in the success of Laravel, because there will be a day, you know, where Laravel is not the hottest thing, or maybe because PHP's dead or whatever, some other tech has come along that's made PHP super irrelevant, and Laravel is just not the thing anymore. And, you know, I want to be able to move on from it and feel like it was still something that was like a once in a lifetime experience. And I met a lot of cool people and saw a lot of cool places, and I'm happy with that, you know? So I think it's just a healthy balance, and I want it to be huge and successful, but at the same time, like, I'm so thankful for what's already happened. Like, if, you know, if something happened, if some, you know, cool tech came out tomorrow that just blew PHP and Laravel out of the water, like, whatever, we'll just go build a framework for that language, I guess, and start all over again. But I don't know. I'm just really taking my time with this new package and trying to make it the absolute best I can and the best I know how to make something, and, you know, put it out there at Laracon and see what people think.
That's awesome.
With each new version that comes out, is there thinking going behind the design and architecture to make you know, upgradability, you know, easy? You know, when Laravel 6 eventually comes out and things like that, is that some of the thought that it gets put into, since it's now more popular, more people are using it, it's going to be upgraded?
Yeah, it definitely is, you know, closer in our minds than it used to be when Laravel was just sort of a, you know, the first couple versions where it's mainly just weekend hackers hacking on Laravel. But the upgrade to 5.6 is probably the easiest upgrade we've ever had. I upgraded, you know, I started writing this package on 5.5, and now I've been writing on a 5.6, and I didn't have to make any changes actually to the entire code base. So this would be a really easy upgrade. I mean, the funny thing about Laravel 6 is, you know, there's no paradigm shifting changes I really want to make. It's all just sort of add-ons and stuff like I've been doing now to just sort of flesh it out. So I think it's more likely that Laravel 6 will be just a product of not wanting to have a Laravel 5.10 more so than it is a, you know, any groundbreaking, huge paradigm shifting upgrades. I think we'll eventually just increment the number because we don't want to go any higher on, you know, the 5. whatever series, and just change the number. And I don't think it will be like Laravel 4 to 5 or Laravel 3 to 4, where it was huge, you know, totally, the framework looks totally different under the hood, because I'm really pretty happy with where it is now. And I think it's in a good spot, and it's sort of easy to build on and extend, and it's pretty flexible.
Good. That's the meat of the questions that we had gathered. We have
Okay.
10 minutes or less left. Let me open it up to everyone else. That spark any questions? Oh, no, we didn't. Would you like me to ask that one?
Oh, we also did do the
Okay, so we're going to test your composer knowledge. The question was, why do you always have to do composer dump auto?
When? And like in what situation?
Ouch.
a lot of the documentation or self-help stuff when you're like, I'm having an issue where so a lot of times that's to do with caching, or when you're making a package or adding a new service provider, you either have to bust the cache, whether it's cache or what have you, routes cache, or you have to do composer dump autoload to dump the generated autoload file.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people ask those kind of questions, but I feel like I rarely run into that myself, and I don't know why, because I'm working with Laravel pretty much all day, every day, but I just rarely seem to hit those kind of snags. And I don't know if there's just like a workflow difference, or like I'm just kind of blind to something, but I definitely don't run compose. I don't think I've ran composer dump autoload in the last several weeks, because it's usually just run for me when I'm installing or updating a package. So I don't know. I'll have to go look at like specifically what, situations people are running that in, or I don't know if it's just sort of like they get themselves in a bind, and it's sort of like the old delete the entire vendor directory and hit composer install, or delete node modules and run npm install, or it's just sort of like a big bomb on a smaller problem. But I don't really know. I'll have to look at a specific case, I think, to have a better idea.
Fair enough.
Maybe the autoload file is just like so terrifying that it just dumps itself. Like
Okay, now to your question. So the question was, how will Laravel support multi-server, multi-node applications while being as environment agnostic as possible. Like you mentioned today, that feature that just got rolled in is, artisan schedule or a schedule command you can say on one server or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Laravel's outtake on or outlook on creating applications that we can put on multiple nodes or swarms, and we don't have to worry about the environments if their environments are different.
A lot of those recent features have been driven by some sort of atomic cache, like Memcached or Redis. So, like, if you're going to use that new scheduler feature, you have to be using Memcached or Redis. Like, you just have to, because it's just not really feasible to do it for us right now in any other way, because the other drivers, cache drivers, don't have they don't have the locking mechanisms to be able to do that. So, and it's the same kind of the same way with Horizon, which is sort of our distributed queue sort of power up with the UI and everything, where it's really Redis based, because it's sort of the best tool we have that's one, widely available and free and works great on for multiple servers and stuff. So I don't know, it seems like recently there's been kind of those technologies, but other than that, I wouldn't say that PHP is super hard to deploy on multiple servers, thankfully. So usually just like have a database or cache server and then several web servers, and it's usually not too bad.
That's interesting. I was actually thinking about Horizon a few weeks ago. I was looking into it, and I was like, why do I have to use Redis to get this cool reporting?
Yeah, I mean, it would be theoretically possible actually for us to support other queue drivers on Horizon. I think we probably will. I mean, that's something I would like to see in 2018, is support for all the queue drivers in Horizon. The only real thing about Redis is the queue driver that we sort of have the most, we can gather the most information about the state of the queue from really easily, because it's the only queue driver that we 100% have total control over every part of the functionality of it. So like all the other drivers are some SDK, like, or some third party entirely, like Amazon, or like the Beanstalk driver. We have like sort of a package that interacts with it, and we don't have, you can't dig into Beanstalk as like in depth as you can as Redis, because it doesn't have the same data structures and like capabilities. So Redis is sort of the best of both worlds, where it's local and fast, I mean, really fast, and also we can do a lot of our own custom data storage and calculations and stuff. So it was sort of the best candidate, I thought, for our first driver. Although we can support other drivers, I think we'll just have to think about it a little bit. And but when I wrote it at the time, I knew we could eventually support other ones.
Yeah, that's very cool. The work that I've done recently, we've been moving a lot more towards jobs, queuing, and are very interested in the statistics on what's happening with those jobs without having to like manually log everything. So I think that's a great feature.
Yeah, and I feel like queues are getting, that's sort of something that's I think's gained traction in the past few years, similar to how what we talked about earlier, where a lot of our backends are just returning, JSON to the front end. A lot of the apps now are using queues more and more to do background work and stuff like that. So it's another thing I think that is uniquely positions Laravel in kind of a strong way, because no other frameworks really have such an advanced queuing system as Laravel, and definitely don't have sort of the UI around it like Horizon. So I'm really glad we got that out there last year, and if we can improve on it more this year, I think it'd be really good for Laravel overall.
I agree. I think so. Does anyone here use Horizon yet? Yeah. Okay. A handful. All right, 3 minutes left. Any last questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So as Taylor's very productive developer, I would like to hear more about tools, plugin, things you've added recently. Because sometimes I'll see set up, no idea what you're doing.
Were you able to hear that, Taylor?
You'll have to repeat it for me.
So he's saying, are there any developer tools or services or features that you've incorporated into your workflow recently that you were like, oh wow, can't believe I wasn't using this before? Any, you know, because sometimes we see you up there doing screencasts, we're like, oh, whoa, how do you do that? You know? And,
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple. One of the main ones, which honestly is one of those things where it's like, I can't believe I wasn't doing this before. Whereas I still use Sublime Text. So if you use that, there's a package called PHP Companion where, say you have like, I mean, just a situation where you have a class and so you type hit some other class in another namespace and you have to go up to the top and do, you know, use, you know, the full namespace path to import it or whatever. I was typing out like all those imports by hand until like maybe 2 months ago. So PHP Companion, you just like put my cursor over the class name and do find use, some little command, keyboard command. It just puts the import at the top of the file for me. So that saved me quite a bit of typing. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, I feel really dumb for not doing that earlier. But I'm trying to think of other ones. I have other little helpful, I have a custom command palette in Sublime Text to reveal the current file in the sidebar. I use that quite a bit. I'll have to put that out there in like a gist or something. And then I also use every day, David Hemphill, let me get the exact repo for it. He has, this is also for Sublime. Sorry, mine are so Sublime focused, but it's just sort of like what I'm in every day, really. Oh, it's under Adam Wathan, actually. So github.com/AdamWathan/Sublime-PHP unit. It's a PHP unit package that just sort of lets you put your cursor in any test method in your PHP unit test, and then you can run just that method or run the whole file straight from Sublime, and it just like pops open your terminal and runs just that file or just that method. I use that a lot because a lot of times, you know, even if my entire test suite takes only 10 seconds or so, that's still like, if I'm running test over and over and over, that starts to feel sort of like lame. So with this, I'll usually, if I'm working on a feature, I'll use this to run the test for just that one feature over and over and over. And then when I'm at the very end, I'll run, you know, the whole test suite once. So that just saves a lot of time. So check that out if you use Sublime Text. Other sort of productivity tools outside of that, I'm a really heavy Todoist user. The to-do list app, I use that every single day, all day. I use that to organize, you know, everything, my daily to-do list, my, you know, everything I'm working on with my package. I sort of have sub projects for that. I think it's really the main things I can think of recently.
thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for Taylor Otwell. Awesome. It's been fantastic having you take the time to chat with us. I'm sure you're a busy man, and we appreciate it. We look forward to Laracon Online and Laracon this summer.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
All right, see you. Bye.